The ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro. Why was it suddenly abandoned? You're here now, in this moment, and I want you to just breathe. Let the weight of the day melt away. Feel the way your body rests against whatever is holding you. Your bed, your chair, the couch. Release your shoulders, unclench your jaw. Let the sound of my voice wrap around you like a warm blanket. Tonight, we're going somewhere far away, and yet closer than you think. Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from right now? Is it somewhere quiet where the night air presses gently at your window? Maybe a room lit only by a small lamp? Or perhaps you're outside with the scent of rain or the hum of crickets. Wherever you are, let yourself sink into it. This is your time to drift. You close your eyes and feel it. The air is heavy with a scent you cannot quite name. It's the scent of rain meeting stone, of old water flowing through forgotten channels. In your mind, you take a step forward, and there, rising through a veil of mist, the first walls appear. Pale stone blocks, weathered yet proud, carved with patterns that time has not entirely erased. You hear nothing at first, only the soft whisper of wind winding between empty streets. Then, a sound. Not a real sound, not something your ears can catch, but a vibration in the air like the stones themselves are humming. You move slowly, as if the air here is thicker than at home. Each step presses into dust that's older than memory. The ground feels uneven, cobbled with bricks laid by hands that have long since turned to dust. The mist swirls, parting just enough for you to see that the streets stretch out in perfect lines. A city built with a precision that feels almost impossible. You can feel your heart beat slow as your gaze travels along the endless rows of bricks, their edges softened by centuries, yet still holding their shape. The silence is strange here. It's not the kind of silence you get in an empty room or a quiet night in your neighborhood. This is a deeper silence, a silence that has weight, a silence that listens back. You take another breath, and the air tastes faintly metallic, like water from a deep hidden well. Somewhere above, the clouds shift, letting a thin ribbon of moonlight spill over the rooftops. You walk on, guided by that light, and you notice how clean the streets are. No weeds pushing through the cracks, no rubble piled in corners. It's as though the people who lived here simply stepped away. Yesterday. And yet there is no sound of them. No murmur of voices, no flicker of firelight. Only the architecture remains, as if the city itself has decided to stay alive long after its makers have gone. You trail your fingers along the wall as you pass. The stone is cool, almost damp. You imagine the people who once leaned here speaking softly in the shade. Children running past with laughter in their eyes. The scent of spices carried from market stalls. All of it gone now, except in the patterns of the bricks and the way the streets lead you onward. Somewhere in the distance you see what looks like a pool of dark water. You approach and find yourself standing at the edge of a great bath, perfectly shaped, the steps descending into shadow. You can almost see the water as it must have been. Clear, reflecting the sun, rippling with the movements of bathers who came here daily. The stone edges are worn smooth, not from time, but from use. You reach down to touch the surface, but your fingers meet only empty air. The bath is dry now, but still it feels alive. A soft wind stirs, and with it comes a sound, faint, like the echo of footsteps, not yours. You pause, turning your head to listen. Nothing moves. The sound is gone, but it leaves a shiver that runs down your spine. This city, this place, it's not just ruins. It's a memory made solid. It's the echo of 1,000 days lived and forgotten. And you, here in the quiet with the moon above and the mist drifting around you, you can almost believe that if you turn the next corner you would see them. The people, the life, the pulse of the city still beating in the shadows. And yet, you know this is a city that no longer belongs to the living. A city erased from memory, left to sleep beneath layers of earth and silence for thousands of years. A city that, when rediscovered, raised more questions than it answered. The air shifts again, and a thought drifts into your mind uninvited. Why was this place, vast, luminous, advanced, abandoned so suddenly? The mist closes in around you, but you keep walking. Somewhere in your chest, curiosity burns like a small flame. You are here now, and you will not leave until you understand. The stone, the shadow, the silence. They are your companions now, and together they will lead you deeper into the story of the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro. A story that begins long before the night you arrived. So rest your head, slow your breathing, and let the images unfold in your mind. We're about to step into the heart of a mystery that has waited for thousands of years for someone. For you to listen. You stand very still, and the night stands with you. The mist thins like a lifted veil, and the stones breathe again, a low hum under your feet, steady and reassuring. The air is cool on your face, soft against your eyelids when you blink, and for a long moment you simply listen, listening to nothing, to the strange fullness of silence. Your body remembers to relax even here, shoulders settling, hands uncurled, breath slow and even. The city waits, carved and careful, shrouded in pale light, and you feel as if you have stepped into a room that has been expecting you for a very long time. The stone, the shadow, the silence. Your three quiet companions follow close. You move down a narrow lane where the bricks are arranged with simple wisdom, each one fitting the next like a kind word. The walls on either side are low, their edges softened by age, and, as you walk, your steps make a hush instead of a sound. Somewhere an owl speaks, a brief note that rises and fades like a thought you almost caught. At a corner, the lane opens into a wider path, and you can see the straight lines of the city's plan, streets crossing like calm rivers, drains running where water once hurried, thresholds marking the edges of homes that no longer hold a fire. The design feels luminous in its simplicity, order made gentle, not strict, as if the builders had loved both logic and life. The question arrives then, not as a shout but as a ripple in the quiet. Why did they leave? Why did a city so carefully made, so deeply lived in, go empty? You feel the thought as a weight and a light at the same time, a hand on your shoulder guiding you forward. It is a question that does not rush you. It merely walks at your side, patient, endless. You let it be there, a companion beside the other three stone, shadow, silence. Its name spoken softly in the spaces between your breaths. You pass a row of doorways, each one a dark mouth that once smiled to greet a neighbour. You imagine a hand sliding a latch, a child's feet darting across a threshold, a pot set down with a soft clay sound. The walls remember it all. The walls remember even if you do not. At one doorway you pause and lean in. The air inside is cooler, the temperature of hidden places. You picture woven mats, low stools, a jar of water shining faintly in lamplight. Nothing moves, yet the room holds shape, like a memory that refuses to blur. You step back into the lane, and the night air touches you like a calm hand. Ahead, a raised platform holds the remains of a staircase. It climbs a short way into the dark and stops, broken, a fracture in the city's logic. You stand at the base and trace the line of it with your eyes, imagining feet going up and down, the living motion that gave the stairs their meaning. You do not climb. You simply stand and look, and the silence seems to gather at your ankles like shallow water. Above you, the moon edges out from a cloud, painting the bricks with a silver that does not feel cold. You realize the city is not bleak. Even emptied, it is tender. It was made to be kind to the people who lived here. The wind moves, gentle as a careful breath, and you hear the echo of footsteps. Not the harsh echo of a cavern, but a soft one, as if the ground itself remembers the weight of nightly returns. Someone coming home, someone carrying grain, someone humming a tune meant to keep the dark content. You follow that echo down another street where the drainage channel is still clear, a narrow run of shadow that once sang with water. You picture rain, the first cool splash, the streets slick, the scent rising in waves. The city was built to welcome water, not fear it. You can feel that in the way the channels fall, in the quiet certainty of the engineering under your feet. You stop at a square where the ground opens into a well. The mouth of it is ringed, with bricks that look almost new despite their age. You step closer and peer down. Darkness looks back, but it is a soft darkness, not a forbidding one. It is the darkness of depth, of a place that once offered relief. You imagine the rope, the bucket, the turn of the wooden wheel, the splash as it met the surface far below. To draw water is to connect surface and depth, and in that thought your question stirs again. Why would a city with such thoughtful care, such patient craft, be left to the dust and the quiet? The echo of footsteps fades, and all that remains is your breath, and the faint murmur of the stones. The air shifts, the kind of small change that tells you the night is moving on. You notice how the lines of the streets meet at angles that feel intentional, measured with a mind for both function and grace. Here, a doorway set back for shade. There, a brick set sideways to signal something small but clear. These details feel intimate, almost like whispered advice from someone who wanted the city to live well. You think of the people as close, not distant. You do not see them as figures in a distant chart, but as neighbours with names you will never learn. They had rituals and mornings, worries about small things, spilled grain, a chipped jar joys about small things, cool water, a child's first steps. The city wears these ordinary miracles like a necklace. The hook tightens but gently. Why did it end? Why did the markets grow quiet? The wells stop singing? The great bath lie still? The question does not accuse, it invites. It invites you to listen for the answer, in the slow drift of the wind, in the way dust settles along the lines of a brick, in the patient squares of space where people once gathered. The city seems to say, do not hurry. Nothing true is ever found by rushing. The silence is not empty. It is a page turned slowly so the ink does not blur. You move again, reaching a long straight street that draws your eye toward a higher mound. The path rises and your steps rise with it, soft and even. As you climb, you feel the shape of the city lay itself out beneath you, a plan drawn by steady hands. It is not loud in its beauty. It is calm, a measured breathing. At the top you stop, letting your gaze travel, and you picture the river in its old course, closer than it is now, a living ribbon that gave the city its purpose. From here you can sense the relationship between water and wall, between flood and refuge, between sky and street. Order, again, but an order made for life, not control. A memory that is not your own brushes your cheek. In that memory the sun is high and the city is awake. Traders set out trays of beads, blue and green like bits of river made solid. A baker's hands dust a flatbread with flour that shines in the breeze. A woman lowers a pot into the well and raises it gleaming. A child runs past a second shadow. It is all so simple, so close. You feel tenderness for these imagined lives, and for a moment the night seems to pulse with them, the past and present touching like fingers in passing. Then the pulse fades and you are alone again on the mound with the moon and the quiet. You speak to the city in your mind. You say, I am listening. You say, I will not push, but I will not turn away. The question sits down beside you, polite and attentive, and together you watch the street sleep. You notice how the straight lines create a rhythm, like slow breathing. You notice how the gaps are not accidents. They are spaces for rest, for gathering, for the drift of evening air. You notice how careful the bricks are. Care runs through this place like a soft thread, and it is the presence of that care that makes the mystery so deep. Care built this, care kept it. What then unmade it? You stand again, and the wind follows, and you walk back down into the lanes. The mist has thinned to a silver gauze, and your path is clear. The stone, the shadow, the silence stay with you, small and faithful, and you realize they are not warnings but guides. They keep you moving at the right pace, slow, respectful, awake. As you pass another doorway, the faintest scent reaches you. Something like earth after rain, something like clay warmed by hands. It may be imagination. It may be memory rising from the ground. Either way, it is gentle. You reach the edge of the great bath again, the steps descending into a pool of shadow that looks almost like sleep. You sit on the uppermost step and place your palm against the brick. It holds the night's cool, the moon's light, the city's long patience. You let your eyes soften, let your breath match the slow rhythm of distant leaves. Then, softly, you ask the question aloud, so quietly that only the stones can hear. Why were you abandoned? The word abandoned drifts out and dissolves, not harsh but tender, as if even the question must be softened to fit the place it enters. There is no answer yet, only the comfort of the night and the steady presence of what remains. You accept that. You're not here to solve a puzzle. You are here to walk with it. You are here to let the city show you the way it once was, to let the story lean close in its own time. The question will return, again and again, but it will not disturb your rest. It will simply glow at the edge of your thoughts like a small, patient star, guiding, not demanding. When you rise to go, the stones hum once more, the slightest echo of welcome or farewell, you cannot say which. The wind drifts along the lanes, gathers in the square, slips over the bath and carries onward toward the old river path. You follow in its wake, listening for what the night keeps. The city is not finished with you, nor is your body finished resting. You are both in the beginning of a long, gentle listening, and gently with the moon as witness, you step deeper into Mohenjo-Daro, your question beside you, your breath quiet, your heart open to the luminous dark. The night folds itself around you like a patient storyteller, and the hum of the stones follows with each step. The mist has drawn back, as though giving you room to see more clearly. You walk slowly, not because you must, but because you want to, because every turn, Every shadowed doorway feels like a page in a book that has been waiting for someone to read it again. Your body is calm now, limbs loose, mind gently floating between wake and the soft edge of dream. The air carries the faint scent of something ancient, not dust, not earth alone, but a kind of memory and fragrance, the perfume of time itself. Down the long street ahead, you see the outline of something larger, not a house, but a structure that feels like the heart of the city. Its base is broad, its walls rising in quiet confidence against the pale wash of moonlight. You move toward it, your steps slow and deliberate, feeling the weight of the silence settle deeper around you. The wind carries a low sound, perhaps a sigh, perhaps the shifting of distant leaves, and for a moment you almost think the city is speaking. This is where the story changes. You can feel it in your chest before you can put it into words. The city is no longer showing you only its empty streets. It is beginning to tell you how it began. The air thickens with the sense of the past drawing near, brushing against your skin like the edge of a curtain in a still room. And then it happens, not with a flash or a noise, but like the gradual blooming of light before sunrise. You see them, not sharply, not in every detail, but in the way you sometimes see the shape of a thought before it forms into words. They are here, the people who once filled these streets. They are dressed in the woven cloth of another age, their bare feet moving softly over the same bricks beneath yours. Men with trays of beads, women carrying jars balanced on their heads, children weaving between the stalls of a market that smells faintly of spice and baked bread. The sound is gentle, like ripples on a wide river. Voices speaking in a language you don't know, but somehow feel you understand. Mohenjo-Daro was born long before your time, around 2,500 years before the first pages of our recorded history began to fill. Here in the valley of the Indus River, they built not just shelter, but a vision. The city was drawn with straight streets and perfect angles, as if the builders were guided by some quiet geometry of the earth itself. They placed wells where the people would need them most, carved drains to guide away the rains, and laid out the homes so that light and wind would pass gently through. It was not the work of hurried hands, it was the careful art of a civilization that understood how to live in balance with its land. You walk among them unseen. The sun in their world is warm on your face, the smell of baked clay and fresh grain mixing with the sharper scent of metal from the smith's workshop. A cart passes, its wooden wheels creaking softly, pulled by a pair of oxen with slow, patient eyes. Traders lean over cloth-draped tables, their fingers moving over piles of bright stones and small seals carved with animals, tigers, elephants, birds that may never have existed. A woman at the corner sells something steaming in small bowls. The smell is savoury and earthy, and you wonder if the recipe has been lost to time or still lives on somewhere, unknown to its origins. Everywhere you look, there is water, in jars, in wells, in the shallow channels that line the streets. You see men and women lowering buckets, lifting them brimming, pouring into waiting vessels. The people do not hoard it. Water is life here, and it flows as freely as the breath between words in a story. You think of the great bath you saw earlier, now dry, and imagine it in this moment. Men and women stepping down into the cool, clear water, their voices soft in the bright air. The bath is not only for cleansing the body, it is a place of gathering, of ritual, of shared stillness. You watch the rhythm of their lives, a rhythm made of market days and planting, of building and mending, of cooking and rest. It is not a hurried rhythm. It is as if they knew that life was not meant to be a race, but a river, wide, steady, always moving but never rushing. There is something in this that makes your shoulders sink a little deeper, your breath slow even more. A child runs past you laughing. The sound rings in the air, bright and light. You turn your head to follow him and see his mother waiting just ahead, holding out her arms. She kneels, gathering him close, her smile as real as any you've ever known. For a moment, the city feels as close as your own heartbeat. But even in this warmth, you sense the faintest undercurrent, something the people do not yet know. It moves under the surface like a slow tide, invisible until the day it rises. The stone, the shadow, the silence, they are still here, watching from the edges. You remember that you're not only here to see how the city lived, you're here to understand why it was left to the dust. A man passes carrying a clay jar so large it hides half his body. His steps are sure, his expression calm. Behind him, a woman spreads cloth across a low wall, smoothing it with careful hands. In the distance, a sound like hammers on wood. The city is always being built, repaired, cared for. And yet, you know that someday soon, though soon in this story means many years, all of it will stop. The hammers will fall silent. The markets will empty. The water will no longer be drawn. You try to imagine it, but here in this moment, under this bright sun of memory, it feels impossible. The city is too alive, too precise, too loved to simply vanish. You think of your question, the one you carried from the first moment you stepped into the mist. Why? The word hangs in the air, unspoken, carried along like a small leaf on the surface of the river that runs through their lives. The scene begins to fade, not like a curtain falling, but like sunlight shifting behind clouds. The people grow softer, the sounds quieter, until all that is left is the whisper of the wind over stone. You're back in the night, the market gone, the streets empty. The moon has climbed higher now, laying pale light along the lines of the streets. You stand in the same place you stood a moment ago, only now the city sleeps again. You let out a slow breath, the kind that comes after listening to something precious. The vision lingers behind your eyes, the faces, the voices, the easy grace of their days. It's as though the city has shown you a gift, a secret glimpse into its heart, so that you will understand the depth of the loss before you hear the rest of the story. The wind turns, bringing with it the scent of the river, faint, distant, but still there. You realize that this river, the Indus, was the city's lifeblood, the reason it could rise and thrive here in the first place. And as you stand there, the thought takes shape in your mind. Perhaps it was also the reason the city fell. You do not know yet, but you will. The city will tell you if you keep walking. You take another step, and then another. The bricks firm beneath your feet, the night steady around you. The stone, the shadow, and the silence move with you. And somewhere just beyond hearing, the hum returns, low, steady, like a promise that the next turn will bring you closer to the truth. You follow it, your body calm, your mind open, ready to let the story lead you deeper into its ancient, luminous dark. The hum is steady now, a quiet undercurrent beneath the rhythm of your steps. You follow it deeper into the sleeping city, letting it guide you through streets that seem to fold in on themselves like lines in an old map. The moonlight lays silver ribbons across the bricks, and in some places, The mist curls back in to stroke the ground. Your body feels warm, heavy in that comforting way, as though each step releases something you've been carrying all day. There is no rush here, no sense of time moving against you. Only the steady unfolding of the story, layer by layer, like cloth being unwrapped. You find yourself in another square, this one smaller than the last, hemmed in by low walls and the shapes of houses that have long since opened their roofs to the sky. You step carefully over the threshold of one, the bricks beneath your feet still set firmly, as if they might yet welcome their owners back. Inside, you can see where the walls once held shelves, where a doorway led to another room, where the floor dips slightly, perhaps to hold water or grain. The spaces are small, but there's no feeling of confinement. They feel intentional, built for comfort, for warmth, for the kind of life that values closeness over distance. As you stand there, the quiet deepens, the edges of the room soften, and the air thickens with a kind of presence. The city is ready to show you another vision. You close your eyes, and when you open them, again the empty room is gone. You're standing in the same house, but the walls are whole, the shelves lined with jars and woven baskets. A small clay lamp flickers on a shelf, casting warm light across the space. A woman sits near the doorway, grinding grain on a flat stone, the slow scrape of her work blending with the faint sound of water outside. Her child plays nearby, rolling a small carved toy back and forth across the floor. The air smells faintly of cooked grain and fresh clay. You step outside into a narrow lane that is alive with movement. A man walks past carrying bundles of reeds. Another leads a goat by a thin rope. Across the lane, a woman spreads bright cloth to dry in the sun, her hands moving in a practiced rhythm. The light is soft, filtered by the shapes of rooftops above. This is not the noise of a chaotic city. It is the low, constant murmur of a place at ease with itself. You follow the lane until it opens into a larger space, a kind of neighbourhood square. Here traders have set out their goods, baskets of grain, pots of oil, handfuls of beads. The people barter without raising their voices, gestures and short phrases passing between them like well-rehearsed lines in a play they have known all their lives. There is no rush, no pushing. Everyone seems to know they will get what they need. The river is not far from here. You can hear it. The slow push of water over stone. It draws you down a sloping path toward a series of steps that meet its edge. A group of men and women fill jars there, their voices low and even. Some of them pause to wash their hands and faces, letting the water run cool over their skin before they lift the jars to their shoulders and turn back toward the city. You realize how carefully life here is tied to water, not just as a need, but as a rhythm, a pulse. You wander back toward the heart of the city where the great bath waits. This time, it is not dry. It is filled with clear water that catches the sunlight like a mirror. People step down into it slowly, some in pairs, some alone. They move without hurry, as if the act of bathing here is more than just washing away dust. It is a ritual, a renewal. You can feel the calm in the way they move, the way their voices are soft, the way the water holds their reflections without breaking them. As you watch, a thought brushes against you, soft but insistent. This city, this way of living, it is so carefully balanced. Every street, every drain, every step in their daily life seems to fit into a pattern of harmony. And yet, something will break it. You don't know when, you don't know how, but the knowledge sits in the back of your mind like a shadow that will not leave. You drift through the streets again, letting the life of the city surround you. You pass a workshop where a potter shapes clay on a slow-spinning wheel. His hands are steady, patient, the vessel taking form almost without effort. Nearby, a group of children gather around an older man who draws patterns in the dust with a stick. You cannot understand his words, but the children watch him closely, their eyes bright. You wonder if they are learning numbers or perhaps stories. In a city like this, the two might be the same. The market draws you once more. The colours, the smells, the feel of it like a river flowing through the streets. A trader shows a woman a small carved seal, pressing it into soft clay to leave an impression of an animal. She smiles, nods, and offers him a string of beads in return. There is an ease to the way they trade. No coins, no counting, just an understanding of value that lives in both their hands. Somewhere a bell rings, not loud but clear. The sound ripples through the streets, and people pause in their work. You notice the way they listen, how the tone changes the air. It's not an alarm, not a warning. It's something older, something that speaks of gathering, of attention. A few begin walking toward the source, their steps slow, unhurried. You follow, curious, but before you can see where they're going, the scene begins to fade again. The colour drains from the walls, the warmth from the air, until you're back in the moonlit ruin. The great bath is dry again, the steps cold under your feet. The market is gone, the jars empty, the river a distant whisper. You stand alone in the square, your breath making a faint cloud in the cool night. And yet, the life you saw lingers in you. You can still hear the scrape of the grainstone, the soft voices at the well, the splash of water in the bath. They echo in your mind, making the silence around you feel full instead of empty. You realize this is the gift the city is giving you, to feel what it was before you learn what it became. You move on, the wind shifting around your shoulders, carrying the scent of stone and something else, something faintly metallic, almost like a memory of heat. It is out of place here, and you file it away, knowing it will mean more later. The stone, the shadow, and the silence walk with you, but they feel different now. Less like guardians, more like guides leading you toward a truth you are still too far away to see. As you step back onto the long street, you think again of the question that first followed you here. Why was it erased from history? The city has shown you its life, its balance, its beauty. Soon, it will show you the first signs of change, and you will listen, slowly, carefully, the way you would listen to a friend telling you something they've never told anyone before. The air is cooler now, as if the night itself is drawing you inward, closer to the heart of something long hidden. The moon, high and pale, spills its light over the rooftops, painting each brick with a quiet silver. You walk on, feeling the faint grain of the stone beneath your feet. Your breathing is slow, each inhale deep and steady, each exhale loosening the last threads of the day's weight. Your body knows you are safe here, even if your mind still carries the restless hum of questions. The stone, the shadow, and the silence are beside you, unhurried, and you let their pace set your own. The street bends, narrowing into a passage that feels older than the others you've walked. The bricks here are worn smooth, the edges rounded as though touched by thousands of hands, thousands of footsteps. You step into it. The walls close on either side and the air shifts, cooler still, almost damp. At the end of the passage you see a low archway. half covered in the shadow of a leaning wall. You duck beneath it, emerging into a courtyard that feels hidden, even in a city already long abandoned. Here, the moonlight struggles to reach the ground. The walls around you rise higher, their tops jagged with the erosion of centuries. In the center, a circle of stones forms the outline of something once used, once vital. You kneel beside it, brushing away a thin layer of dust with your fingertips. Beneath the dust, the stones are dark, their surfaces faintly pitted, as though they once held fire or water, or perhaps something neither. It is in this quiet place that the vision comes again. It arrives slowly, not with the warm daylight of the other memories, but with a grey dawn. The air is heavy, still. The courtyard is full now, not with people, but with an uneasy tension. A man kneels by the circle of stones, checking the vessel at its centre. Around him others gather, speaking in low voices, their expressions drawn. The river has not risen this season, you hear someone say. Or perhaps you only feel the meaning behind their words. The air is too dry. The ground is too hard. The days in this vision seem to pass in a blur. You see the markets thinner, the baskets less full. You see more people at the wells, their jars lifted with effort from water that sits lower and lower. The great bath still holds water, but fewer people enter it. The voices there are quieter. At night the wind blows dust into the streets, and the people sweep it away with tired hands, only for it to return. The sky has changed. Its colour is different now, the clouds fewer, the air more brittle in the heat of the day. One evening in this vision, you stand in the market square. The traders' tables are half empty. A woman counts her beads twice before offering them, her face shadowed with worry. A man carries a bundle of reeds so small it seems almost not worth the trip. There is no argument, no shouting, only the slow quiet of a city beginning to lean under a weight it does not yet understand. You walk toward the river in this memory. When you reach its edge, you see that the water sits far below the highest mark on the stone banks. The steps that once disappeared beneath the surface are dry all the way down. People stand on the last few steps, their voices low, pulling water up with greater effort than before. Even the river's voice has changed. It no longer moves with the same constant song, but with the sluggish murmur of something thinning. And then, just as quickly, the vision shifts. You're back in the moonlit courtyard, your hand resting on the cool stone circle. The air is still heavy with the echo of what you have seen. It was not sudden, this change, not yet. But the balance you had felt in the earlier days of the city's life, it is beginning to tip. You stand, brushing the dust from your palm, and step back into the narrow passage. The city seems quieter now than before, as though it knows you have begun to understand its slow turning toward decline. The mist, which had thinned earlier, drifts in again, coiling in the alleys and hanging in the spaces between the walls. You walk without a plan, letting your feet choose. They lead you to another part of the city where the ground rises slightly. The streets here narrower, the walls closer. You find a line of small doorways, each leading into rooms that seem to mirror each other. Perhaps workers' homes, perhaps places for travellers. Most are empty, but in one you find something small. A clay pot, half buried in dust, its rim chipped. You lift it, feeling its surprising weight. There is nothing inside now, but the faint scent of earth and something metallic clings to it, like the echo of what it once held. As you set it back down, you feel the hum again, not louder, but deeper, resonating in your chest. The stone, the shadow, and the silence have drawn closer, their presence almost tangible now. They seem to be telling you without words that there is more to see, that the story of decline is not as simple as the river running low. And so you walk again, turning through another narrow street until you come to an open space unlike the others. Here, the ground is uneven, scattered with stones that do not seem to match the rest of the city's order. Some are blackened, as if by fire. You kneel, touching one. It is rougher than the bricks of the streets, its surface fused in a way that does not feel natural. You think of the metallic scent, of the heat you imagined earlier. The vision stirs again, flickering at the edge of your mind, but this time it does not take full shape. Instead, it offers only glimpses, a flash of light against the sky, the sudden movement of people in the streets, the sense of something happening quickly without warning. And then it is gone, leaving you with the blackened stone in your hand and the faint smell of rain on dry earth. You stand there for a while, the wind moving gently around you. The night is deep now, the stars faint behind the veil of mist. The city does not feel threatening, even in this darker place. It feels tired, perhaps, not in the way of something defeated, but in the way of something that has endured far longer than it should have to. As you turn to leave, you glance back at the uneven ground, at the scattered stones. They are part of the answer. You can feel it. But they are not the whole answer. The truth is a woven thing with many threads, some of them as slow and subtle as a river changing course, others as sudden and sharp as fire. You walk back toward the main street, your mind holding the pieces you have seen so far, the early harmony, the careful design, the gentle rhythm of life, the creeping dryness, the thinning markets, the low river, the strange blackened stones, the metallic scent, the half-formed glimpse of light in the sky. The city is not yet ready to speak it all aloud, but you can feel it drawing you closer to the moment it will. The stone, the shadow, and the silence move beside you as you return to the higher ground. They do not hurry, neither do you. The night has time, and so do you. Somewhere ahead, beyond the bend in the street, the next part of the story waits, its voice patient, its truth steady in the dark. The bend in the street leads you upward, toward the higher ridge of the city. The climb is gradual, yet every step feels as though you are leaving behind something softer and are moving towards something heavier. The air here is drier, the scent of the river fainter. The moon's light glances over the rooftops, catching edges of brick and sending long slanting shadows across your path. Your feet make the smallest sound as they meet the stone, a whisper against the hush that drapes itself over Mohenjo-Daro like a long, unbroken sigh. At the crest of the rise, the street opens to a view that widens the night. Below, the lines of the city stretch outward, neat, deliberate, intersecting like threads in a woven cloth. Even in ruin, it still carries that order, that care. You can see the paths where the people once walked, the broad ways for carts, the narrower veins for foot traffic. The sight is quieting, the way a wide horizon quiets the sea. You pause there, letting your breathing match the slow rhythm of the city's layout. This is where the official story begins to take shape, the one the archaeologists tell, the one written in careful lines on maps and museum plaques. In that account, the people of Mohenjo-Daro lived in the height of the Indus Valley civilization, their city flourishing with trade, governance, and culture. They point to the straight streets, the well-planned drainage, the public baths, and they say, here is evidence of a people who mastered urban living 4,500 years ago. In the accepted version, decline came gradually. They speak of rivers changing course, of floods that eroded the farmland, of shifts in climate that made it harder to sustain life here. They suggest that the people moved away, perhaps to join other settlements, carrying their knowledge with them. It is a tidy theory, one that fits into the language of textbooks and lectures. And perhaps much of it is true. But standing here, the city quiet around you, you feel that there is more. The tidy version does not explain the blackened stones you touched, the strange metallic scent, the faint glimpse of sudden light you saw in the vision. It does not explain the sense of interruption that clings to certain streets, as though the story stopped mid-sentence. You walk down into the heart of the upper city, where the walls rise higher and the rooms are larger. Here, the streets seem to converge toward what might have been an administrative centre. You find yourself before a broad building with a wide entrance. No doors now, just the opening where people once passed in and out with purpose. You step inside. The air here is cooler, the sound different. The kind of soft echo that comes from being surrounded on all sides by stone. You run your fingers along the wall, feeling the faint ridges of the bricks. In the moonlight filtering through gaps above, you can see outlines of platforms and low walls that might have divided the space into rooms or offices. This is where the city's affairs were managed, where grain was measured, disputes settled, trade recorded. The vision comes again, not as vividly as before, but enough to see the movement of figures in the space. Men leaning over low tables, women carrying bundles of cloth or baskets of grain. The air smells faintly of parchment and clay. The sound of softer voices mixes with the scratch of tools on stone. It feels calm, organized, and yet, here too you sense the undercurrent. A man pauses in his work to glance toward the doorway, his brow furrowed. A woman, passing by, whispers something you cannot hear. They return to their tasks, but the stillness is different now, as though they are bracing against something unseen. You leave the building and follow a street that runs straight as narrow toward the edge of the city. The ground slopes downward again toward an area where the bricks are lighter in colour. Here, you find a series of smaller wells, their walls intact but their mouths dry. The emptiness of the wells draws your attention. In the vision, they were places of chatter and activity, but now they stand hollow, silent. Kneeling at the edge of one, you peer down into the darkness. The air rising from it is cool but faint, as though even the earth beneath has grown still. You imagine the voices that once rose from this place. Neighbours sharing news, children leaning over to watch the bucket disappear into the dark. You imagine the relief when the rope came back wet and heavy. Now there is nothing to lift. The absence presses on you like a second silence, deeper than the first. As you move on, you begin to notice other signs, subtle but there. A wall with a section collapsed inward, as if from a tremor. A row of bricks shifted out of alignment, the crack between them wide enough to fit your hand. You press your palm against one such fracture, and feel the chill of stone that has been broken a very long time. You remember the archaeological records you once read, mentions of possible earthquakes in the region, of floods that came too often or not at all. The official story allows for these, but as you walk, the sense of something sharper, faster, refuses to leave you. The fractures and the blackened stones, the sudden visions of light, the way the city seems to hold its breath. These things do not speak of a decline that took centuries. They hint at moments, at days or even hours, when the ordinary rhythm of life was shattered. The stone, the shadow, and the silence are close now, as if guiding you deliberately towards something important. You follow their pull until you reach a platform at the edge of the upper city. From here, the view is broad. You can see the outlines of the lower city, the winding path to the river, and beyond that, the darkness where the land disappears into the horizon. It is here, with the city spread out before you, that the weight of the mystery settles over you fully. You're no longer just a visitor to a ruin. You're walking inside the question itself. The walls, the streets, the empty wells, they are not just remnants. They are words in a language you're learning to read. And somewhere in this language is the sentence that explains why the city fell silent. You stay there for a long while, the night air moving gently against your face. The official theory, the tidy version, hums faintly at the edges of your mind. But the city has begun to whisper another version, one not yet written in books, a version that holds both the slow drift of rivers and the sudden flare of something unrecorded. When you finally turn to leave, you feel the presence of your companions more strongly than ever. The stone at your side, the shadow just behind, the silence all around. They lead you back into the streets, toward a place where the next layer of the story waits, patient in the dark, ready to show itself when you are ready to see. The streets narrow again as you descend from the high platform, the air thickening with mist that swirls around your ankles. It is colder here, the kind of cold that holds a quiet sharpness, and you feel it seep slowly through your clothes. The moonlight softens, diffused by the haze, and the shadows deepen until they are almost shapes themselves, moving with you. The stone, the shadow, and the silence seem closer than ever, not pressing, not urgent, but near enough to touch if you reached for them. Your steps take you into a quarter of the city where the walls lean in toward each other, forming passages so narrow they feel like the seams between great pieces of cloth. The bricks are older here, rougher beneath your fingertips, as though this part of Mohenjo-Daro has endured more seasons than the rest. The air carries a faint scent, not just the metallic trace you have smelled before, but something dry and bitter, like the remnants of smoke that has long since cooled. At first, you think this part of the city is like the others you've seen, empty, quiet, waiting. But then you notice the ground. The dust here is darker, heavier, clinging to the soles of your feet. You kneel to touch it, and it smears across your fingers, leaving a faint black mark. When you rub your fingertips together, it feels fine, almost like powder ground from stone. That is when the vision comes again. But this time, it does not begin gently. It arrives in a sudden rush, like a door thrown open by wind. You see the street in daylight, and it is alive, but not with the steady, peaceful rhythm you have known. People are moving quickly, their faces tense. A woman hurries past carrying a child, her head turned sharply over her shoulder. A man shouts something to another, his voice rising in urgency. There is no laughter, no market chatter, only the thud of hurried feet and the short, clipped sounds of warning. The air feels heavier in the vision, the sunlight muted by a haze you cannot name. Somewhere, far off but growing closer, a deep sound rolls, not the soft voice of the river, Not the call of the wind, but something low and unbroken, as though the ground itself is speaking. People stop just for a moment, listening. Then the movement begins again, faster this time, and then it happens. The light changes, sharpening to something unnatural, bright enough to make you turn your head. There is heat in it, sudden and fierce, and a sound like the sky breaking open. The vision fractures here. Flashes of images breaking over you. A wall shuddering and collapsing inward. A jar falling and splitting against the street. The great bath rippling with waves, though no one has touched the water. When the light fades, the haze thickens, carrying with it the acrid taste of something burned. People are coughing now, their movements slower, heavier, as if the air itself resists them. A man stumbles and does not rise. Someone kneels beside him, shaking his shoulder, but he does not move. The vision blurs, the sound recedes, and you're back in the dark street. The mist curls upward in slow spirals. Your hands are trembling slightly, though the night is still calm. You look down at your fingers, still faintly blackened from the dust, and wonder if it is the same dust you saw rising in the vision. You walk on, deeper into this part of the city, and the signs become clearer. A wall with its upper layers fused into a glassy sheen, as though it had been licked by heat far hotter than any cooking fire. Stones lying in patterns that suggest they did not simply fall with time, but were pushed outward by force. A doorway with its edges crumbled in a way that looks sudden, violent, not worn. The official story rarely speaks of these things. They are mentioned perhaps as curiosities, signs of an earthquake or a fire or both, but they are not dwelled upon. You remember this from what you've read. The archaeologists' careful phrasing, the way they step around certain details. Here, in the street itself, those details are unavoidable. The stone, the shadow, and the silence seem to slow now, as though allowing you to take in every mark, every shift in the pattern of bricks. You pause at another collapsed wall, tracing the jagged edge with your fingertips. The brick crumbles slightly under your touch, leaving red dust on your skin. Beneath it, you notice a thin layer of darker material, almost black. It flakes away easily, fragile as ash. You sit for a while on a low step nearby, letting the quiet press in. The city feels different here, not just empty but interrupted, as if the lives within it were paused mid-movement. You picture the people you saw in the vision, the woman with the child, the man shouting, the faces turning toward the strange light. You wonder what they thought it was. You wonder how quickly they understood that their lives had changed. Far off, you hear the faintest sound, a drip perhaps, or a stone settling. It brings your eyes upward to a sliver of sky between the leaning walls. The moon hangs there, pale and distant, its light silvering the mist. You take a slow breath and feel your heartbeat settle again. Whatever happened here, it happened long ago. The streets are calm now. The danger is only a memory, held in stone and shadow. But you can feel the city urging you forward still. This was only one moment, one piece of the puzzle. There are other places, other fragments of the truth to be seen. You rise, brushing the black dust from your hands, and follow the narrow street until it opens into a wider path. The air is clearer here, the scent of the river faint but present again. Ahead, the path leads toward the lower city, where the buildings spread wider apart and the streets are broader. Even from here, you can see that some of them are in better shape, less scarred by whatever touched the quarter you just left. But you can also feel that the story will not grow gentler from here. It will deepen and perhaps darken as you move on. The stone walks at your left shoulder, solid and sure. The shadow drifts just behind you, long and quiet, and the silence, always, is wrapped around you like a second skin, not empty, but waiting. You step forward, letting them guide you into the next chapter of the city's long, unfinished song. The street widens as you descend toward the lower city, the bricks beneath your feet flattening into long, even stretches. Here, the air feels lighter, but the mist lingers in shallow pools between the buildings, gathering in the hollows like breath in the pauses between sentences. The moon follows you, slipping between the outlines of walls and rooftops, its pale light flowing over the stone like water over polished wood. Your pace is slow, steady, the kind that lets your body relax into the rhythm of the walk. The stone is still at your side, the shadow still behind, the silence all around. Their presence so constant now that you cannot imagine taking a step without them. The lower city was once where the lifeblood of Mohenjo-Daro moved the strongest. You can feel it in the space. The broader streets, the low walls that once marked market stalls, the faint pattern of drainage channels running like veins across the ground. Even now, in the emptiness, the design holds a quiet efficiency. You imagine carts rolling through here, their wooden wheels groaning softly, baskets of grain swaying with the motion. You picture voices calling to one another across the lanes, not in alarm, but in the ordinary rhythm of a day that begins and ends without hurry. And yet, as you walk deeper, the vision returns, unbidden this time, as though the city itself is eager to speak. It begins at the edge of morning, the first light catching on the tops of the buildings. People are moving through the streets with purpose, but their pace is uneven. Some walk briskly, their faces tense, while others linger at corners, talking in low, urgent voices. The market is not as full as it should be. Half the stalls are empty. A potter sits behind his table, turning a small vessel in his hands, as if unsure whether to sell it or keep it. At the far end of the street, a small group has gathered. You drift closer, unseen in the vision, and see that they are looking at something in the distance, beyond the walls of the city, toward the dark line of the horizon. You follow their gaze, but the light there is strange. Not the warm gold of morning sun, but a dull, shifting glow, like embers beneath ash. The people murmur to one another, some shaking their heads, others glancing nervously toward the river. The vision shifts. A sound like distant thunder rolls through the air, but it does not fade. It swells slowly, a low and constant vibration that you feel more than hear. In the market, a jar tips over, the grain spilling in a slow arc across the ground. People look up, their eyes search in the sky as if expecting to see the source of the sound. And then there is movement. Subtle at first, a quiver in the edges of the buildings, a tremble in the ground beneath your feet. Someone calls out, the sound sharp in the thickening air. The glow on the horizon pulses once, then twice, and the light seems to bend, shimmering like heat over stone. You blink, and the vision stutters, breaking apart. You're back in the empty lower city, the mist curling gently in the lanes, the moon high above. The air is still, but your heartbeat is quick, as though your body has not yet realized the danger is long gone. You pause at the side of the street, placing a hand on the wall beside you, feeling the cool solidity of the brick. This part of the city does not carry the same scars as the quarter you saw before. The walls here are straighter, the streets less broken, and yet you cannot shake the feeling that the lower city was where the last traces of life clung longest, where people lingered before they finally left, whether by choice or by necessity. You wander into a broad square that opens suddenly before you. At its centre stands a raised platform, its edges still sharp despite the years. You climb onto it, and from here you can see how the streets radiate outward like spokes from a wheel. It was a place designed for gathering, for voices to meet and carry across the open air. You stand still, imagining the sound of those voices filling the space. The vision comes again, softer this time, like a memory repeating itself in fragments. You see a group of people here, not a market crowd but a smaller assembly. They stand in clusters, speaking quietly, their expressions heavy. Some hold bundles, others carry nothing. A man gestures toward the road leading out of the city, his voice low but steady. There is a sense of decision in the air, of something being agreed upon without joy. In the corner of the square, a young woman kneels beside a child, adjusting the strap of a small bundle on his back. She smiles at him, but her eyes are wet. He nods solemnly, as if he understands more than his years should allow. You try to hold on to the vision, but it fades again, leaving only the cool moonlight and the faint whisper of wind over stone. You step down from the platform and continue along one of the radiating streets, following the path the man in the vision pointed toward. It leads you to the edge of the city, where the walls give way to open ground. The earth here is uneven, cracked in places where the dry season must have bitten deep. You can see the faint glimmer of the river in the distance, and for a moment you think of the water rising high against its banks in the seasons of flood, a lifeline and danger all at once. You kneel, pressing your hand to the ground. It is cool, but dry, the kind of dryness that sinks deep into the soil. You think of the rivers changing course, of the official stories talk of drought and shifting water. You can believe it, standing here. And yet your mind keeps returning to the glow on the horizon, the sound that vibrated through the bones of the city. As you rise, the stone shifts beside you, as if to remind you that you are still within the heart of the mystery. The shadow leans longer now, stretching toward the river. The silence hums faintly, not as emptiness, but as a space in which answers might one day speak. You turn back toward the city, the streets leading you once again into the maze of brick and dust. Somewhere within these walls is the moment the city stopped, the exact breath in which life became memory. You know you will find it, though not yet. The story still has pieces to give you, one by one, in the slow rhythm of its own telling. The night deepens as you walk, the air cooling further. You pass by a row of narrow doorways, each one opening into rooms that are nothing but rectangles of shadow now. You pause at one, placing your hand on the frame, feeling the faint warmth that still clings to the stone, as if the day's sun had not fully let go. For an instant, you think you hear a whisper, not from the wind, but from within the room itself. It has gone too quickly to catch the words. You keep walking. The moon follows, and somewhere ahead, the next vision waits, curled in the folds of the city's long and silent memory. The moon seems lower now, its light thickened to a softer glow, as though the night itself is leaning closer to listen. You follow a broad street that slopes gently downward, its bricks still aligned in straight, careful lines despite the centuries. The mist thins here, parting to reveal the long channels carved beside the road, drains that once carried away the rain, guided the floodwater, kept the city clean. Even in silence, Mohenjo-Daro's order remains intact, its patterns refusing to fade. The air shifts, carrying a faint scent of river water mixed with dust. You close your eyes for a moment and let it settle into you. This is where the official history would speak again, of a people who built with precision, who understood both the movement of water and the rhythm of trade. Scholars call this a marvel of the Bronze Age, a place that shone for centuries before its decline. They would tell you that the theories are simple enough. Climate change, the shifting of rivers, the slow bite of drought. That as resources waned, the people simply moved on, leaving behind the streets and wells for the desert to reclaim. They would tell you that time did the rest, burying the city under layers of silt until it was found again in the last century. And yet, as you walk, the stones seem to murmur a different truth. The drains are still here, the wells still lined with bricks that have not crumbled, the houses still arranged in perfect grids. This was not the ruin of neglect. It feels instead like a place where the work was simply stopped, tools set down, doors left open. The silence is not the silence of decay, but of interruption. The vision stirs, pulling at you like a slow tide. You let it take you. The street is bright again, alive with footsteps. Men and women carry baskets, clay jars, bundles of cloth. Traders are setting out their goods, though the air is tense in a way you can't quite name. People keep glancing toward the horizon, toward something unseen. You hear voices exchanging short, clipped words. Not panic, but preparation. At the far end of the street, a man kneels by a drainage channel, running his hands along the bricks as if checking for damage. Another approaches him and says something quickly. They both straighten, looking in the same direction. You follow their gaze and see a thin veil of dust drifting along the edge of the city. It moves strangely, as though pushed not only by wind but by something heavier. The vision sharpens, the air grows warmer, the light slightly dimmer. You feel a subtle vibration under your feet, steady but not yet strong enough to disturb the street. The people begin to move more quickly now. Doors close. The market stalls are abandoned mid-arrangement. The dust on the horizon thickens. And then the vision fades, leaving you standing once more in the quiet street. The drains beside you are dry, the market gone. You take a slow breath, noticing the faintest trace of that same dust in the air, though it has long since settled into the city's bones. You follow the street until it narrows again, opening into a small courtyard. Here, a well sits at the centre, its mouth still perfectly round. You peer into it, seeing only darkness, but the air rising from within is cool and damp. It feels alive somehow, a remnant of the time when water was drawn here daily. You imagine the rope groaning under the weight of a full bucket, the splash as it reached the surface. Leaning against the well's edge, you think about the scholars' theories again. They fit neatly into the shape of reason. Rivers move, climates shift, cities adapt or vanish. But they do not account for the blackened stones you have seen, the strange fusing of brick, the metallic scent that comes and goes like a ghost. They do not account for the visions, sudden light, vibrations in the earth, the hurried movement of people who seem to sense something coming. The stone beside you seems to hum more faintly now, as though agreeing that the official story is only part of the truth. The shadow leans forward, and the silence deepens, inviting you to look closer. You leave the courtyard, following another street that leads you toward the eastern edge of the city. The buildings here are smaller, the walls lower, as though this was once a quieter district, perhaps for workers, perhaps for families who preferred distance from the markets. You notice the marks of daily life still etched into the bricks, faint grooves where doors once slid open and closed, shallow depressions where jars might have rested. The vision returns, not in full force this time, but in flashes. A woman standing in a doorway, shielding her eyes from the sun. A group of men carrying something heavy between them, their steps hurried but careful. A child leaning from a window to watch them pass. The ground trembling faintly beneath their feet. The images fade as quickly as they come, leaving you with the sound of your own breathing and the soft brush of mist against your skin. You walk on, the street sloping slightly downward until it ends at another open square. This one feels different from the others, emptier, as though it had been cleared in haste and never used again. You step into its centre, turning slowly to take in the space. There are no market stalls, no wells, no sign of what this place once held. The emptiness itself is the message. This was a place where something ended. The silence here is heavy, almost tangible. You feel it settle on your shoulders like a weight. But it is not unkind. It is the silence of respect, of a city holding its memories close. You stand there for a long moment, letting it wash over you. When you finally step out of the square, the path curves back toward the heart of the city. You realize that you're moving in a slow spiral, as though the city is leading you inward, towards some center it has not yet revealed. The stone walks easily at your side, the shadow drifts just behind, and the silence folds in closer. You do not know yet what you will find at the center, whether it will be an answer or simply another question. But you know that each step is taking you deeper into the truth, and that the city will reveal it in its own time. The night feels older now, the air cooler still. You pass another row of doorways, each one dark, each one a fragment of a life once lived. The moon glances across the rooftops, lighting your way, and you follow it, ready for whatever part of the story waits in the next turn of the street. The spiral through the city draws you inward, though you can no longer tell whether the streets are guiding you or you're simply moving by instinct. The air feels denser here, not with heat or mist, but with the weight of what lies ahead. The moonlight is softer now, dimmed by a thin veil of cloud, and in the dimness, the bricks seem to drink in the light, their edges fading into shadow. Every sound is muted. Even the whisper of your own footsteps feels swallowed by the silence. This is where the story begins to open into its second voice. You have heard the official one, the slow, careful tone of scholars and archaeologists speaking in tidy explanations. But there is another, quieter voice that speaks from the edges of the known record, the voice of those who wonder aloud what else might be possible. The air here feels like that voice, not urgent but persistent, leaning toward you as though sharing something just beyond what is allowed to be said. You come to a narrow lane, the kind that feels more like a seam between buildings than a true street. Its bricks are uneven, the drainage channel along one side filled with fine dust. You follow it until it opens into a small courtyard where a single wall still stands higher than the rest. On that wall, half buried beneath centuries of wear, you see faint carvings, patterns that don't match the geometric precision of the city's layout. These are more fluid, almost wave-like, curling into shapes that seem to move even as you stare. You step closer. The carvings are worn but deliberate, their curves holding a rhythm you cannot place. They remind you of water, but also of wind, and perhaps of something else, something that moves unseen but shapes the world all the same. You run your fingers over the lines and feel the faintest vibration, so subtle you might mistake it for the pulse in your fingertips. The vision comes again. This time, it does not show you the markets or the river. Instead, you are standing in a dim room lit by flickering oil lamps. A small group of people are gathered here, their faces shadowed, their voices low. They are speaking quickly, urgently, and though you cannot understand their words, the cadence feels like debate. A disagreement sharpened by the fear of something close at hand. One of them gestures toward a clay tablet laid out on the floor. It is etched with markings you do not recognize, arranged in neat rows. Another points toward the ceiling, where the faint rumble of something outside vibrates through the beams. Their faces are drawn tight, but there is no panic, only a grim understanding. They know what is coming. The vision shifts. Now you are outside again, in the courtyard, watching as these same figures emerge into the open air. They split apart, each moving quickly down different streets. One carries the clay tablet, wrapped in cloth. Another glances over their shoulder before disappearing into the shadows. And then it fades, leaving you in the silent courtyard with your hand still resting on the carved wall. The vibration under your fingertips is gone. You stand for a while, letting the shapes of the carving settle into your mind. Were they simply decoration, or something more? A record, a warning, a way of speaking across centuries? The official voice does not mention carvings like these, but the quieter voice, the one that moves in the spaces between facts, would say that knowledge does not always survive in the form we expect. You leave the courtyard, taking another narrow path that leads downward toward an open plaza. Here, the air feels strangely charged, though the night is calm. You notice again the blackened edges of some bricks, fused as though by great heat. You pause beside one wall, running your palm along its surface, feeling the glassy smoothness in places where the clay was altered forever. The alternative theories rise in your mind now, the ones the official accounts rarely linger on. The idea of a sudden catastrophe not born of nature alone, of weapons or forces capable of generating heat so intense it could melt stone, of events so disruptive they do not fit into the measured timeline of gradual decline. Such ideas are not printed in textbooks, but they move in whispered conversations, in margins, in the minds of those who refuse to stop asking. The plaza in front of you seems to hold that same tension. You step into its center, feeling the way the space gathers around you. In the moonlight, the outlines of the surrounding buildings form a near-perfect square. You imagine it filled with people, standing shoulder to shoulder, faces turned towards some unseen speaker. Perhaps it was once a place of gathering, of decision. The vision stirs again, but it is faint. Only the sound of many voices layered and low, and the flicker of torchlight against the walls. You cannot see their faces this time, only the sense of bodies close together, breathing in unison. The air in the vision feels heavy, not with heat, but with the weight of a choice. And then it slips away, leaving you with the empty plaza under the moon. You continue walking, your steps guided by something deeper than sight. The streets feel more maze-like here, looping back on themselves, doubling in directions you do not expect. You pass another collapsed wall and another doorway half filled with rubble. Somewhere nearby you hear the faint trickle of water, surprising in this dry season of the city's memory. You follow the sound until you find a narrow channel still carrying a thin thread of moisture. It glistens in the moonlight, winding between the bricks like a silver thread in an old tapestry. You crouch beside it, letting your fingers dip into the coolness. The water carries the scent of earth and stone, a reminder that even in abandonment, something still moves here. It whispers of the river's persistence, of the ways life finds its channels even after the builders are gone. When you stand again, you notice the stone at your side feels warmer, as though it has been touched by the same unseen current. The shadow behind you stretches longer now, brushing the edges of the street ahead. The silence remains, but it is no longer still. It has the faint texture of something about to speak. You take a deep breath, steady and slow, and keep moving. The alternative voice in your mind continues to speak softly, not in answers, but in possibilities. Perhaps the carvings were a record of an ancient event. Perhaps the fused bricks were not the work of fire alone. Perhaps the hurried departures in your visions were not migrations, but escapes. The city does not confirm or deny. It only guides you forward, deeper into its heart, where the questions and the answers are tangled together in the same dark thread. Ahead, the street bends, disappearing into shadow. You follow it, feeling the pull of the unknown, the steady hum of the stone, the patient drift of the shadow, the listening quiet of the silence. Whatever waits beyond that bend will bring you closer to the center of Mohenjo-Daro's last breath, and you are ready to hear it, even if it is only a whisper carried through 4,500 years of night. The bend in the street delivers you into a quieter quarter, where the buildings are set farther apart, and the open ground between them is brushed with the pale silver of moonlight. The air feels lighter here, yet there is something beneath it, a low vibration that hums along the edges of your awareness, like a thought you have almost caught but can't quite name. The mist has thinned to wisps that drift lazily between the walls, and above, the stars are clearer, scattered across the sky like grains spilled from an unseen hand. This is where the city begins to speak in another way, not through the memory of its streets, nor the scars in its bricks, but through the threads of stories carried in the minds of those who came long after. Folklore, myths, fragments of voices that echo down generations, reshaped by each retelling. These are not found in the measured lines of archaeological reports, but in the quiet corners of villages, in the words of elders speaking by the fire. You walk between two low walls, their tops broken and jagged, and emerge into a broad, open space. At its center stands something unusual, a column of stone, worn nearly smooth, its surface etched faintly with marks you cannot identify. It does not seem to belong to the city's strict geometry. It feels older, as if it had been here before the city was built, and the builders chose to shape their streets around it. The vision comes gently this time, as though the city knows you must listen closely to understand. You're in the same place, but the column is brighter, its markings sharp. Around it, people stand in a circle, their heads bowed. An elder speaks, their voice low and rhythmic, telling a story to those gathered. The words are not in a language you know, but the tone carries meaning, a tale of a time when the land shook and the river turned to fire. The people shift as the elder's voice deepens. You see their faces in the torchlight, some solemn, some afraid, others with eyes fixed intently on the column. The elder places a hand on the stone, tracing the markings with slow care. Whatever this story is, it is not simply a memory, it is a warning. The vision fades, but the feeling remains, curling inside you like smoke, a river turning to fire, impossible perhaps, and yet the fused bricks and the blackened stones you have seen do not entirely reject it. Folklore as a way of carrying truths in strange shapes, wrapping memory in the fabric of myth so that it will survive long after the facts are gone. You circle the column, running your hand along its weathered surface. The stone hums faintly under your touch, as if remembering the hands that traced it before. You wonder how many times this story was told here, and how much of it changed with each telling. Beyond the open space, the streets begin to wind again. You pass a low doorway and glance inside. The room beyond is empty, but you imagine it lit by the flicker of a small fire, a group gathered inside as the night presses close. You can almost hear the voice of another storyteller, speaking not of rivers and fire, but of shadowed figures who came from the sky, or from beyond the river's farthest bend. In one tale, they were bringers of knowledge, in another, they were destroyers. In all, they came without warning and left without trace. You think of the glow you saw on the horizon in earlier visions, the strange heat, the sudden movement of the people. Such details slip easily into myth. Over centuries they could become the shape of gods, or demons, or forces too vast to name. The path curves and leads you toward the edge of the city, where the walls fall away into open ground. Here, the air is cooler, and the wind carries scents from far beyond the ruins. Dry grass, river water, and something faintly sweet, like blossoms that bloom only at night. You stand still for a moment, breathing it in, and the silence stretches wide around you. In that stillness, another fragment of story surfaces. It comes not as a vision, but as a whisper in your own mind, as though spoken from just behind your shoulder. The city was not built for the first time. You turn, but there is nothing there. Only the stone at your side, the shadow just behind, and the silence pressing close. The whisper lingers, though, and you consider its meaning. Could Mohenjo-Daro have been raised on the bones of an even older city? Could the people who built here have been living among the remnants of a past they only half understood? Folklore would not reject such an idea. It would dress it in poetry, of cities swallowed by the earth and reborn, of cycles that turn over centuries, of knowledge lost and found again. In such stories, nothing is ever truly gone. It only sleeps, waiting for the right moment to rise. You walk along the edge of the city, looking out over the dark fields beyond. The stars above are mirrored faintly in the winding thread of the river, and you remember that all great rivers are keepers of stories. Perhaps the Indus carries fragments of Mohenjo-Daro's truth in its currents even now, silted into the bends and eddies where water slows to rest. The path leads you back inward, toward the deeper streets. You pass a cluster of smaller buildings, their walls leaning into one another as though in quiet conversation. In your mind you hear laughter, quick, bright, the kind that slips into storytelling at night, when fear is far enough away to be woven into a tale instead of a threat. A final vision comes here. A group of children sitting cross-legged in a circle, their eyes wide as an elder tells them about a night when the ground shook and the sky turned strange. In the story, the people of the city hid in the Great Bath, believing the water would protect them. Some say it did. Others say that when the sun rose, the bath was empty. The elder smiles at this part, letting the mystery hang in the air, because sometimes the not knowing is what makes a story live the longest. The vision fades, and you find yourself once more in the moonlit ruin, the night deep and still. You keep walking, carrying with you the fragments you've gathered, the column with its warning, the whispers of earlier cities, the tales of rivers turned to fire and skies filled with strangers. These are not facts in the way the scholars would write them, but they are truths of another kind, truths that belong to memory rather than measurement. The stone seems warmer now, the shadow longer, the silence richer. They lead you forward, deeper into the heart of the city, where perhaps myth and record will meet, and the line between them will blur until you can no longer tell where one ends and the other begins. The streets draw you inward again, curving like quiet rivers toward a place you have not yet seen. The air changes as you walk, still cool but edged now with a weight you can almost feel pressing against your skin. It is not the heaviness of danger. It is the heaviness of something withheld. The mist creeps lower here, curling around the bases of the walls, softening the hard lines of brick. Moonlight catches in it, breaking into faint silver halos at each corner. This quarter of the city feels different from all the others. The layout is more deliberate, the streets wider, the walls higher. You notice the precision again, bricks laid in perfect lines, joints still neat after thousands of years. Here, the silence is thicker, almost deliberate, as though the city itself has drawn a curtain around this place. You follow the main road until you reach a broad structure at its centre. The walls rise taller than any you've seen so far, their surfaces smoother, less scarred. Even in ruin, it has the presence of authority. You step through the wide doorway and into a large open hall. The air inside is cooler still, the echoes of your footsteps moving away slowly as if reluctant to leave. This, you realize, is where the story grows careful. The official histories speak of such places as centers of administration, where grain was measured, trade tallied, and records kept. But they rarely speak of what was decided here, or how those decisions shaped the city's last days. The vision comes without warning. The hall fills with people, their sandals whispering over the smooth floor. They move with purpose, forming small knots of conversation, their voices low. Along the walls, clay tablets and scrolls are stacked in neat rows, some carried from place to place by young runners. At the far end of the hall, a group of elders sit on raised platforms, their faces lit by the slanting light from above. A man steps forward from the crowd. He speaks quickly, gesturing toward a large clay map set in the centre of the room. On it, the lines of the city are carved in detail, the river winding along its edge. His finger traces a curve in the river's course, then moves to mark another line, a place farther away, beyond the city's limits. The elders exchange glances. You do not understand the words, but you feel the meaning. Something has shifted. The river is changing. Perhaps it is shrinking. Perhaps it has taken a new path. Whatever it is, the man's urgency suggests it is not a slow change, but one already underway. Another voice rises, calmer but firmer, as an older woman stands. She points to the storage halls, to the grain tallies, to something that makes the crowd murmur. Her eyes are sharp, her gestures precise. This is not simply a question of water or trade. It is something larger, a decision that will not be easily undone. The vision trembles, edges blurring, and then it sharpens again. But the hall is quieter now, emptier. The crowd is gone, replaced by a smaller group. The elders and a few others leaning close around the clay map. One of them produces a bundle wrapped in cloth. When it's opened, you see a small object inside, metallic, gleaming faintly even in the dim light. It's like nothing else you've seen in the city. Smooth, without seams, its shape too perfect to have been shaped by hand. The elders look at it for a long moment. One of them covers it again, binding the cloth tight. The object disappears into the folds of another's robe. They rise, speaking in low tones, and the vision fades. You're back in the empty hall, your footsteps once again the only sound. The moonlight falls through the gaps in the roof, lighting the floor in pale squares. The air feels heavier now, as if it has absorbed the weight of those long-ago decisions. You walk slowly to the center of the room, imagining the clay map that once lay here. The elders gathered around it. You think of the metallic object, strange and out of place, and wonder if it was something found or something brought. Perhaps it was the reason for the sudden glow on the horizon you've seen in your visions. Perhaps it was hidden because it did not fit the story the city was allowed to tell. Outside, the streets are still wide, still orderly, but as you walk, you notice more subtle signs. A section of wall with bricks that do not match, as though they were replaced hastily. A doorway blocked by a solid slab of stone. In one alley, a pile of clay shards, fragments of something once whole, broken deliberately rather than by time. The air feels closer here, as though the city itself is leaning in. You remember the way official records sometimes leave things unsaid, how a sentence can be carefully shaped to hide what truly happened. The silence in this part of the city feels the same, not empty but selective. It holds back, offering only what it chooses. You turn down another street and come to a smaller building, its doorway half collapsed. Inside, the floor is covered with a thin layer of black dust. You kneel, scooping some into your palm. It is fine, soft, almost silky between your fingers, and it leaves a faint stain on your skin. You know this texture. It is the same as the dust in the scarred quarter you walked through before. Whatever happened there touched this place as well. The shadow behind you stretches into the doorway as if watching. The stone at your side is warm now, a subtle heat that seems to seep through the air. The silence is deeper, its edges sharp but not threatening. It feels like a door waiting to be opened. You rise and step back into the street. The moon is higher now, its light brighter through the thinning clouds. You walk toward the next bend, your mind full of the images the vision has given you, the clay map, the elders' debate, the gleam of the object wrapped in cloth. The city has shown you its slow decline, its moments of sudden fear, its echoes in myth. Now it has shown you a place where choices were made, where some truths were perhaps hidden, where decisions might have steered the fate of everyone who lived here. You follow the curve of the street, knowing that beyond it the story will turn again. The stone, the shadow, and the silence are close now, their presence steady and certain, as though they too understand that you are moving towards something the city has guarded for a very long time. The bend in the road opens into a section of the city unlike any you've walked before. Here, the ground is scattered with pieces of pottery, shards of carved stone, and fragments of objects whose purpose you cannot guess. They lie half buried in the dust, glinting faintly in the moonlight, as though they've been waiting for you to see them. The air is still, but the silence here feels layered, like cloth folded over and over. A silence that hides things rather than simply resting. You step carefully between the fragments. Some are ordinary, the lip of a clay jar, a piece of a cooking pot, the corner of a carved seal. Others feel strange in your hand, shapes too smooth, edges too sharp, materials that don't match the city's bricks or pottery. You crouch and lift one. A small disc of something metallic, heavier than it should be, its surface etched with a pattern you cannot quite follow. The pattern is not decorative. It feels purposeful, precise. You slip it back into the dust, sensing it does not want to be carried away. The vision begins softly, almost cautiously, as though the city knows these images must be approached with care. You see the same street, but in daylight, the ground cleared of debris. People are moving with unusual speed, not frantic but deliberate, carrying objects from one place to another. Some are wrapped in cloth, others held openly, glinting in the sun. They place them in baskets, boxes, jars with lids sealed in wax. A group of men stand beside a low table, arranging objects into rows. Among them, you recognize some of the shapes you've just seen in the dust. The discs, the shards of carved stone, the smooth fragments of something metallic. They speak in low voices, pausing now and then to glance toward the far end of the street. There, a cart waits, its wheels already dusted with the color of the road. The vision sharpens for a moment. You see one man lift a long, narrow object from the table. It gleams in the sunlight, too bright to be bronze, too smooth to be stone. The others lean closer, their faces tense, then quickly wrap it in layers of cloth. It disappears into a box, which is bound with rope and carried toward the cart. The image wavers, and you are back in the moonlit ruin. The cart is gone, the men gone, only the scattered fragments remaining. The dust swirls faintly at your feet as though remembering the movement of that day. You walk farther into this district, noticing more unusual pieces in the ground. A chunk of stone with perfectly parallel grooves running across it. A fragment of clay impressed with symbols you've never seen. A small, dark shard of something that looks like glass but heavier. These objects do not seem like they belong to the same time as the city around them. They feel older, or perhaps newer, out of place in a way you cannot name. You think of the quieter voice you have been hearing throughout your walk, the one that speaks between the lines of the official history. It would suggest that some of these artifacts do not belong to the Indus Valley civilization at all, that they might have been found here long before the city's last days, and that they might have been part of something much older, a story lost to the ages. The street curves again, leading you into a narrow corridor between two tall walls. The ground here is clearer, as if swept by unseen hands. In the center of the path, you see a stone slab lying flat, its surface unbroken by cracks. You kneel beside it, brushing away a thin film of dust. Beneath, you see faint lines carved into the stone. Not words, but shapes, circles, intersecting arcs, and spirals. The same wave-like forms you saw earlier on the tall column in the folklore quarter. The vision comes again. This time, you are in the same corridor, but the stone slab is uncovered, its carvings fresh and sharp. Two figures kneel beside it, one tracing the spirals with a fingertip, while the other marks something on a clay tablet. They speak in low, urgent tones, glancing toward the sky as if mindful of the time. The one with the tablet rolls it up quickly and tucks it into a cloth satchel. Both rise and move away, their steps quick and deliberate. You watch them vanish into the shadows at the end of the corridor, and the vision fades, leaving you alone with the carved slab. The symbols seem to hum faintly under your hand, though you know it is only the echo of the vision. Still, you find yourself tracing them once more before you stand. The air feels heavier now, thick with the sense that you are walking among pieces of a puzzle too large to fit into one lifetime. The city is not just showing you its last days, it is showing you that it held things that did not fit the world's agreed-upon history. Things that were hidden, removed, scattered. You step out of the corridor into another open square, smaller than the others you've seen. In its centre is a shallow pit, its edges lined with stone. The bottom is filled not with water or dust, but with more fragments. A deliberate collection, perhaps buried here long ago. You kneel and pick up one, a tiny bead made of something translucent, not quite glass, not quite crystal. It catches the moonlight and holds it for a heartbeat before letting it go. You set it back gently. Around you, the walls lean inward, their shadows falling across the pit like a protective arm. It feels as though this place was meant to be hidden, or at least left undisturbed. The stone at your side seems to pulse faintly. The shadow leans closer, and the silence holds its breath. You understand that you're nearing a deeper truth, one that may not be spoken aloud even now. These objects, these out-of-place fragments, are not simply relics. They are part of the reason the city's story was softened, simplified, and told in a way that left certain pages blank. You leave the square slowly, as if reluctant to break the stillness. The streets ahead are narrower again, bending in ways that make you feel you're moving in circles, though you know you're still being drawn inward. The moon glances off the tops of the walls, and somewhere far away, you think you hear the faint rush of the river. The city is not finished showing you what it has hidden, and you are not finished listening. You walk on, each step sinking deeper into the quiet, each breath carrying the dust and memory of things too strange, too old, or too dangerous to have been left in the open. The narrowing streets begin to straighten, leading you forward like long measured breaths. The turns are fewer now, the feeling of circling fading. You sense that you're being drawn towards something larger, something the city has been saving until you've seen enough of its smaller truths. The mist has thinned almost completely, leaving the air sharp and clear. The moonlight pours freely across the bricks, painting them with the cold gleam of polished bone. You come to an open rise, not a platform built by hand, but a gentle mound that lifts you above the surrounding ruins. From here, the city spreads out below like a vast and intricate map, the grid of its streets and the scatter of its courtyards glowing faintly in the pale light. Beyond it, you see the shimmer of the Indus River bending like a long silver thread toward the horizon. And farther still, in the deep dark where the moonlight fails, you know there are other places, other ruins buried beneath the dust and water, other cities whose names were never written down. The vision begins before you can take another step. It rises like the tide, surrounding you without warning. The mound beneath your feet is no longer quiet. It is alive with the sound of voices, the movement of hundreds of people. The city below is not a ruin. It is whole, radiant under a sun that gleams on rooftops and ripples in the water of the river. But you are not standing in Mohenjo-Daro alone. Your sight stretches outward. The river is a highway carrying boats heavy with goods toward other cities, whose shapes you can just see in the distance. Harappa to the north, Lothal to the south, far-flung ports along shores you have never walked. And beyond even those, there are glimpses, faint but clear, of other great places in lands you do not know. Temples carved from mountainsides, vast rings of standing stone, cities that shine under the desert sun. It is not just Mohenjo-Daro's story. It is a map of a network, a web of places that rose together, each connected by trade, by ideas, by something deeper, a shared understanding of how to shape the world with stone and water and light. You feel the weight of their knowledge, the way it flows along the rivers and across the sea, carried by hands and minds that knew far more than the neat lines of modern history allow. But the vision does not stay in sunlight. Shadows slide across the map, swallowing the brightness piece by piece. You see rivers shrinking, their courses twisting away from the cities they once fed. You see walls collapse under the slow hand of time and under other forces faster, sharper. You see places vanish beneath rising water, others lost to drifting sand. And here and there, in different corners of the world, you see something stranger. Bursts of light, sudden and fierce, leaving behind the same blackened stone and fused brick you have touched in Mohenjo-Daro. These are not accidents of fire or war. They are something else, a mark that repeats itself, a signature of destruction written in the same hand across lands far apart. The vision contracts, drawing you back to the mound. The voices are gone. The city below is silent again, the river faint in the distance. The moon has replaced the sun, the mist creeping along the streets once more. You feel the stone at your side, heavier now, the shadow taller, the silence pressed close against your skin. You stand there for a long time, letting the vision settle. It tells you that Mohenjo-Daro was never truly alone, that it was part of something larger, a cycle of cities rising and falling, of knowledge shared and then lost, of destruction that may not have been entirely natural. The official stories might acknowledge the trade routes, the shared designs, the influence of neighbouring cultures. But they do not speak of the strange marks, the repeating patterns of ruin, the way distant places seem to echo each other's fate. When you descend from the mound, the streets seem wider, as though they have opened to let you pass more easily. You walk along a broad avenue that runs straight toward the river's direction, though the water is still far away. The bricks here are in better condition, the walls straighter, as if this part of the city resisted the final wave of damage. Perhaps it was built later, or perhaps it was simply spared for reasons the city keeps to itself. On one wall you see something unusual, a faded outline, drawn in a pigment so faint you almost miss it. You step closer. It is a shape you recognize from the vision, a map of sorts, not of streets, but of rivers and coastlines. The lines are not exact, but the curves and branches match what you just saw. The Indus, the paths that lead to other rivers, the arc of a distant shore. You run your fingers over it, and the surface is rough, the pigment dry and flaking. How long it has been here, you cannot guess. The street curves toward a small plaza where three narrow paths meet. At its centre is a stone basin, empty now but ringed with carvings of fish and flowing water. You picture it filled, the ripples catching sunlight as people gathered to draw from it. Perhaps they spoke of journeys, upriver, downriver, to places where the air smelled different, where the market sold things no one here could make. You leave the plaza and follow one of the narrower paths. The buildings close in again, the air cooling as the moon rises higher. You find yourself thinking of the other cities you saw in the vision, Harappa, Lothal, and those unnamed, half lost in the dark. You wonder how many still sleep under the soil, how many have been erased so completely that no stone remains, and you wonder if their silence is the same as this one, patient, deliberate, guarding truths until someone listens long enough to hear them. The path ends at a wall, its surface smooth except for a single small mark near the base, a spiral carved deep into the brick. You touch it, and though it is cool, you feel again the same quiet hum you sensed on the carved column and the flat stone slab. The spiral seems to draw you inward, not only deeper into the city but deeper into the web of places and times it is connected to. You stand there, hand on the stone, until the night feels endless and still. You know that somewhere ahead the river waits. And beyond that, perhaps, more answers. But for now you turn back into the streets, following the steady pace of the stone, the tall lean of the shadow, and the unbroken thread of the silence, all leading you toward the next piece of the story the city has been saving. The streets slope gently downward now, the bricks warm beneath your bare feet despite the coolness of the night. Somewhere ahead you can hear it, the faint, steady murmur of the river. It threads through the air like a promise, soft but certain, and with every step the sound grows a little clearer. The stone at your side seems to respond to it, its hum deepening in tone. The shadow behind you stretches toward the sound as if eager to arrive. The silence remains with you, unbroken, yet it no longer feels like stillness. It feels like breath held before speaking. You pass between two tall walls and emerge into a long, straight avenue. Here the city's order becomes undeniable, every brick laid in perfect alignment, every drain carved in straight lines beside the road. The moonlight flows down the length of the street as if it were water itself, guiding you forward. You realize this is one of the main arteries of Mohenjo-Daro, a place where the lifeblood of the city once moved strongest. The vision rises without warning, flooding the avenue with daylight. The bricks are hot underfoot, the air heavy with the mingled scents of spices, grain, and river silt. The street is alive. Carts creak under the weight of woven baskets. Traders call out in voices that mingle like overlapping waves. Children run ahead of their parents, chasing each other between the stalls. The river's scent is sharper here, its presence only a short walk away. You follow the crowd until the avenue opens into a vast space, the Great Bath. But in the vision, it is not the silent, empty basin you saw before. It is full, the water deep and still, reflecting the blue of the sky. People move in and out of it with care, stepping down the long brick stairs. Some speak in low tones, others close their eyes as they wade in, as though seeking not only cleanliness, but something deeper. Around the bath, the air carries a sense of ritual. The people do not rush. Each movement feels deliberate, bound to a rhythm you can almost hear beneath the noise of the street. You realize this is not simply a place for bathing. It is a place for renewal, for preparation, perhaps even for protection. The vision shifts, the light dimming, the sounds receding. The crowd is smaller now, the air heavier. Those who enter the bath do so more solemnly, glancing at one another as if searching for reassurance. In the distance, beyond the walls of the city, you hear it. The low, unbroken vibration you've heard before in your visions. It moves through the ground, through the bricks, into the water. The people in the bath close their eyes, some holding hands. Then the vision ends, leaving you in the moonlit avenue once more. The bath is dry, its steps bare, the water only a memory. You stand at its edge, looking down into the basin, imagining the way it must have felt to stand here with the water lapping at your skin, the weight of the city's trust in this place pressing gently against you. You walk along the side of the bath, your fingers trailing over the bricks. Their texture is rough but solid, their alignment precise. You think of how the builders must have measured and set each one, ensuring the walls would hold not just water, but meaning. It feels like a message left in plain sight, that the city understood the flow of water as more than a resource. It was a force to be honoured, contained, and entered with respect. Beyond the bath, the avenue narrows again, curving toward the sound of the river. The scent of water is stronger now, carrying with it the faint tang of silt and reeds. The moonlight gleams faintly on the horizon, marking where the surface of the river must be. You think of the official stories, of how the Indus shifted, how its changing course may have left the city without the lifeline it depended on. Standing here, you can imagine it. The water drawing back, the banks widening into mud, the air growing hotter without the cool breath of the river. You can see how that might have driven people away. And yet, the visions you've seen, the strange glow, the vibrations, the hurried gathering of objects, suggest there was more than one cause. The street finally opens to the riverbank. The water lies before you, slow and wide, the moonlight breaking into silver ripples along its surface. It moves with a calm that seems eternal, yet you know rivers are never truly still. They're always reshaping the land, carving new paths, leaving old ones to dry. You step closer to the edge, feeling the cool air rising from the water. The stone at your side hums so faintly you almost think you imagine it. The shadow stretches out ahead of you, touching the river's surface. The silence wraps around all of it, listening. The vision comes once more, as if the river itself is telling it. The bank is crowded with people, their belongings piled at their feet. Some are loading small boats, others wading into the shallows to fill jars. The air is tense but not chaotic. This is not flight, but departure. The current is stronger than in the present, the water higher against the banks. Far upriver you see a shimmer of light. It is faint at first, but it grows, bending along the water's path until it seems to pulse in time with the current. The people notice it too. Some pause their work to watch, others turn away, moving faster. The shimmer grows until it reflects on their faces, a light both beautiful and strange. Then the vision breaks, as if the river has closed itself again. You are back on the quiet bank, the only shimmer now the moonlight on the water. You stand there for a long time, listening to the soft rush of the current. It carries the sound of distance, of places the water has touched before it arrived here, of places it will touch after it leaves. You wonder if somewhere far downstream, the same water once carried fragments of Mohenjo-Daro's story, scattering them like seeds. When you turn back toward the city, the avenue stretches before you, pale in the moonlight. You can see the great bath in the distance, its empty basin catching the light like a mirror turned to the sky. The stone, the shadow, and the silence fall into place around you once more, and you walk slowly back into the city, knowing the next part of the story will take you even deeper, perhaps to the moment where its last day truly began. You walk away from the river slowly, letting the sound of its current fade behind you. The night feels different now, not heavier, but sharper, as if every shadow has taken on more definition. The moon has climbed higher, casting a light that turns the bricks pale, and the spaces between them dark as ink. The streets you follow are familiar yet not the same. You recognize certain doorways, certain walls, but the silence here has a new weight to it, as though the city is asking you to tread carefully. The stone at your side hums with the steadiness you have not felt before, and the shadow behind you leans in so close it nearly merges with your own. The silence wraps around the three of you like a cloak. You know you are being led now, not wandering. The city is guiding you somewhere it has kept hidden until this moment. You turn a corner and find yourself standing at the threshold of a long, narrow lane. It is almost entirely intact. The bricks in the walls rise straight and tall, the street beneath your feet unbroken, the drains on either side still deep and precise. It feels less like a ruin and more like a street that has simply been emptied for the night. You begin to walk, the sound of your steps low and even. The air grows cooler the farther you go, and then you see it, a building larger than the others, its doorway set back, its walls smooth. You pause at the entrance, feeling the stillness that spills from within. The vision comes before you cross the threshold. The lane is filled with people, their faces lit by the glow of torches and lamps. They move toward the building in a slow, deliberate procession, each carrying something in their hands, a sealed jar, a wrapped bundle, a carved object of wood or stone. They pass through the doorway one by one, disappearing into the dim light inside. No one speaks above a whisper. The air is thick with reverence, and with something else. Finality. You step into the vision fully now, finding yourself inside the building. The interior is vast, the floor lined with long, low platforms. The people move between them, placing their offerings in neat rows. You recognize some of the objects, the strange discs, the carved spirals, fragments of metal you have seen in the dust. Others are unfamiliar, tools with delicate shapes, containers with lids carved to fit so precisely they might have been made yesterday. At the far end of the hall, a group of elders stands together, watching as the last of the items are placed. They exchange a few quiet words, their expressions unreadable in the torchlight. One by one they turn and leave through a door you cannot see from where you stand. The vision fades slowly, and you're left in the moonlit ruin of the hall. The platforms remain, but they are bare, the floor scattered with dust and a few broken fragments. You walk to the far wall and see that there is indeed a second doorway there, blocked now by collapsed stone but once open. You place your hand against it, feeling the faint coolness of the bricks. You wonder if this was the last act of the city, gather in what mattered most and place in it here, either for safekeeping or for surrender to whatever came next. You think of the metallic object wrapped in cloth you saw in the council hall, of the cart loaded with strange artifacts, of the symbols carved into stone and hidden in quiet courtyards. Perhaps all those paths led here, to this hall. Stepping back outside, you look down the lane toward the city. The buildings seem closer together now, their shadows merging into a single dark shape. You feel the stones hum in your palm, the shadows wait at your back, the silence pressing gently but firmly against your ears. It is not pushing you away, it is keeping you focused, holding you in this moment. You turn away from the hall and follow another narrow street that curves sharply. The walls here bear marks, not carvings, but long streaks where the bricks have been scorched and blackened. The pattern is irregular, as though the heat came in sudden bursts, leaving some areas untouched and others fused into a dark sheen. You run your fingers along one of the marks and feel its smoothness, remembering the same strange texture in other parts of the city. The vision returns, not a full scene, but a flash, a burst of light so bright it erases the sky, a wave of heat slamming into the walls, the air itself trembling, and then it is gone, leaving you in the quiet street with the moon above. You walk on, your steps slow now, as though the city wants you to absorb every detail. A doorway half collapsed, its lintel cracked but still holding. A well with water so still it reflects the moon perfectly. A courtyard filled with nothing but fine, powdery dust. Each place feels like a fragment of a sentence, and you are collecting them, trying to read the whole. The streets begin to open again, and ahead you see a structure you recognize, the Great Bath. You approach it from a new angle this time, one that lets you see the far wall and the narrow ledges running along its sides. You step onto one of the ledges and walk its length, looking down into the basin. The moonlight pools in the dry floor, and for a moment you imagine it filled again, the water glowing under the night sky. A final, brief vision comes here, the bath full but silent, its surface undisturbed. No one moves within it. The water is perfectly still, reflecting the stars above. The air around it hums faintly, the same hum you feel in the stone at your side. Then the image fades, leaving only the empty basin once more. You descend from the ledge and stand at the bath's edge, the night stretching out before you. The river is not far, the city is quiet, and you know that whatever comes next will bring you to the very heart of its last moments. The stone, the shadow, and the silence are closer than ever now, almost as if they are leaning in to hear the same thing you are listening for. The moment when the city will finally speak the truth it has been holding for so long. You step back into the streets, your pace unhurried but certain. Somewhere ahead the story's about to turn from memory into revelation, and you are ready to walk with it wherever it leads. The streets wind gently now, not in confusion but in a kind of deliberate narrowing, as if they are guiding you into a single point. The air is cooler here, touched by a faint breeze that feels as though it has been moving through these ruins for thousands of years, carrying the same dust, the same scent of stone. Overhead, the moon has begun to tilt toward the western horizon, its light deepening into a softer silver, the kind that draws every shadow longer. The stone at your side hums in a low, steady pulse. The shadow at your back seems taller, and the silence has grown so complete that even your breathing feels like a sound out of place. You pass a wall where the bricks are smooth from centuries of wind, their edges rounded until they almost seem like river stones. You run your fingers across them as you walk, and for a moment you imagine that the wall is listening, that it knows you are nearing the center of the story. The path ahead opens into a space unlike any you have seen before, a wide circular court, ringed by high walls that tilt inward ever so slightly. In the moonlight, the bricks catch a pale glimmer, and at the very center of the court stands something you do not expect. A low stone platform, no taller than your knees, its surface carved with spirals, arcs, and shapes that echo the markings you have seen scattered across the city. The vision comes instantly, as if this place cannot be seen without its memory. The court is filled with people. They stand in silence, facing the central platform. The air is heavy with heat, the kind that seems to press from above and below at once. At the edges of the crowd, elders stand watching, their faces solemn, their hands clasped in front of them. From a narrow passage in the wall, a group emerges. They carry a single object, wrapped in layers of cloth. Its shape is strange, not round, not square, but something in between, its edges too perfect to be the work of ordinary tools. They approach the platform and set it gently in its centre. The crowd exhales all at once, as though they have been holding their breath. One elder steps forward and kneels beside the object. He speaks in a voice that is low but steady, the kind of voice meant for ritual, for words repeated many times before. You cannot understand the language, but you feel the weight of it. He places both hands on the object, closes his eyes, and for a long moment no one moves. Then a sound. Low, resonant, deep enough that you feel it in your chest. The air seems to shift, as if the night itself is leaning closer. The crowd stirs, some stepping back, some stepping forward. And then the vision blurs, the sound cuts off, and you're back in the moonlit court. The platform is empty now, but the carvings remain, their lines filled with the soft shadow of the night. You walk to its edge and place your palm flat against it. The stone is cool, but there is something beneath the coolness, a faint thrum, the ghost of that deep sound. You circle the platform slowly, tracing the carvings with your fingertips. They are not random, not decorative. They feel like a code, a way of recording something without words. You think of the spirals on the column, the lines on the stone slab in the hidden corridor, the patterns etched into fragments you saw in the artifact quarter. This is the same language, repeated across the city like a refrain. The official stories never speak of such things. They speak of trade, of agriculture, of drainage systems and brickwork, but they do not speak of symbols that repeat in hidden places, nor of an object carried into a court and treated as if it were the heart of the city. Perhaps they do not know. Perhaps they have chosen not to know. You step back from the platform and turn to look at the high walls. In the moonlight they seem almost seamless, the gaps between bricks so fine they vanish at a distance. You realize how strange it is that such a space, so carefully built, so clearly meant for gathering, has no mention in the guided accounts. It is not a market. It is not a bath. It is something else entirely. The stone at your side is warm now, almost as though it remembers the same heat you felt in the vision. The shadow behind you presses close, and the silence has taken on a quality that feels less like quiet and more like containment. You leave the court, through the narrow passage the group had emerged from in the vision. The walls close in immediately and the air is cooler, drier. You follow the passage until it opens into a small square chamber. The floor here is different, smooth, polished, and marked with faint discolorations, as though something heavy once rested here for a long time. You kneel, running your hand over the smooth surface. The discolorations form a rough outline, one that matches the size and shape of the wrapped object you saw carried to the platform. You imagine it sitting here in the dark, waiting for its time, or perhaps resting after it was returned. The vision flickers briefly, only a shadow of movement this time, figures carrying something out of the chamber, their faces hidden by the dim light. Then it is gone. You rise and step back into the passage, following it until it leads you to a familiar street. The sight of it grounds you. The straight lines, the open sky, the soundless air. But the city feels different now. You're no longer walking through scattered pieces of its memory. You're inside the shape of its ending. The clues are here, in the hidden carvings, the strange artifacts, the blackened stone, the river's retreat, and the sudden burst of heat and light. In the object carried with such care. In the gathering that was not for celebration or trade, but for something the city never explained. You begin to understand that the end was not one thing, it was many, a weaving of events that came together in the space of years, perhaps days, natural changes, human decisions, and something else, something harder to name, something the city has only shown you in fragments. The street opens again into the long avenue that leads toward the high platform you visited before. You walk it slowly, the stone, the shadow, and the silence keeping pace beside you. You feel them almost as people now, each carrying a part of the story, each ready to place it in your hands when the time comes. At the far end of the avenue, the platform waits in the moonlight, its edges sharp against the pale sky. Beyond it, you sense the center you have been moving toward all along, the place where the city's voice will no longer speak in visions or fragments, but in something whole. You step toward it, your breath steady, your eyes fixed on the line where the light meets the dark. You're ready for the city to tell you its last word. The avenue draws you forward like a slow tide, each step measured, each breath deep and steady. The air feels different here, not heavier, not lighter, but charged, as if the space ahead is holding something in suspension. The moon has dipped lower, its light softer now, its silver edges turning faintly gold with a hint of dawn far off beyond the horizon. The stone at your side is warm in your palm, the shadow behind you almost a presence of its own, and the silence feels as though it has been waiting here longer than anything else in the city. The platform rises ahead of you, its sides straight and clean even after thousands of years. You climb its steps slowly, feeling the worn edges of each one under your feet. At the top, the view spreads out, the grid of streets, the open courtyards, the winding lanes, the still ribbon of the river catching what little light remains. This is the highest point you have stood upon in Mohenjo-Daro, and it feels as though the whole city is gathered here with you. The vision comes, but it does not rush in this time. It unfolds. You're standing in the same place, but the city below is alive again. The streets are full, the air rich with voices and the low hum of countless lives moving together. From this height you see not just the bustle but the patterns, the way people move like water through the streets, the way certain paths connect in ways you hadn't noticed before. And then, the change. The hum of life shifts. People stop in the streets, looking toward the same point, a place beyond the river. The air thickens, as if the world itself is holding still. A low vibration travels through the ground, up the platform into your feet. You know this feeling. You have felt it in the visions, in the slabs of carved stone, in the faint hum of the artifacts. The light appears on the horizon. At first it is only a shimmer, but it grows quickly, not like the sun rising, but like something pulling the day out of the night all at once. It moves along the river, reflecting in the water, bending as the current bends. Some people watch in awe. Others turn and begin to move quickly toward the streets that lead away from the bank. You see the elders, gathered in a small group at the edge of the platform. They speak quickly, their faces grave. One of them turns and looks toward the court where the spiraled platform stands. Even from here you can see figures moving there, though the distance blurs their shapes. The light grows stronger, the vibration deepens, and then the vision begins to fragment, pieces breaking away from the whole. You see flashes, the court in darkness, the object gone from its resting place, the bath filled with still water under the stars, the cart loaded with strange artifacts moving quickly through the gates. You see a section of the city emptying as people move in a silent, steady line toward the outskirts. And then for just an instant you see it, a burst of light so bright that the bricks beneath your feet seem to vanish, a wave of heat so intense that the air turns liquid. It lasts only a moment, but in that moment you understand. Whatever happened here was not just a failing river, not just a shift in trade or a slow decline. It was an ending with intent, whether by human hands, by something from the sky, or by forces the city itself had learned to harness. It was an ending chosen, not simply endured. The vision fades. You're standing on the platform in the pale moonlight, the city silent once more. The river lies still, the streets empty, the spiraled court hidden again among the shadows. You realize now that the city has given you all it can. The rest, the truth in full, is not something it can speak. It has shown you pieces, the symbols, the hidden objects, the deliberate gatherings, the patterns of destruction repeated in distant places. It has left you to weave them together in your own way. You stand there for a long time, the wind moving gently across the platform. The stone in your hand hums softly, the shadow lingers at your back, and the silence feels almost warm now, as if it has shifted from withholding to protecting. When you finally descend the steps, the streets welcome you back with their familiar lines and corners. You walk slowly, your pace matching the rhythm of your own breathing. The city seems to move with you, its presence no longer distant but close, walking beside you as you make your way toward the edge of the ruins. At the city's boundary, you pause and look back one last time. The moonlight brushes the tops of the walls, the open spaces gleam faintly, and the river beyond glints in the dark. You know now that you will never see it as just ruins again. It is still here, in the stone, the shadow, and the silence, waiting for the next person willing to walk its streets slowly enough to listen. And perhaps that is the real mystery, not why it ended, but why it still speaks. Now, as you sit back from the story, let your breath soften. Let the stillness of the city settle into you, like dust drifting to the ground after a long journey. If you have walked with me all this way, through the mist, through the narrow streets, through the visions that came and went like the tides, then you have carried a piece of Mohenjo-Daro's silence with you. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from tonight. Drop a comment and share your thoughts. What do you think truly happened here? Was it the river, the earth, the sky, or something we have yet to name? If this journey has stayed with you, consider sharing it so others can walk these streets too. And if you want to keep exploring the forgotten corners of history together, make sure you subscribe, so when the next city whispers, you'll be there to hear it. And as always, may the silence guide you through the past.